He said no one would believe me. He laughed while I was bleeding on the concrete floor. But when that garage door opened, everything changed. And this time, I wasn't the one afraid anymore. The fluorescent light flickered above us, casting shadows that danced like demons on the walls. His smirk vanished the moment he saw them standing there. After months of his whispered threats and my mother's blind denial, Justice finally walked through that door at 2:30 a.m. And for the first time, I smiled. My name is Emily Monroe, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a design engineer for a small tech company in Denver, Colorado. 3 years ago, I thought my life was finally settling into something normal, something safe. My mother had just remarried, and despite my initial reservations, I tried to be happy for her. She deserved love after Dad died when I was 15. She deserved someone who would take care of her, protect her, make her laugh again. Gary Holbrook seemed perfect at first. He was 45, ruggedly handsome with salt and pepper hair and calloused hands from years of working as a mechanic. He brought her flowers every Friday, fixed things around the house without being asked, and always insisted on family dinners at 6:30 sharp. Mom glowed around him in a way I hadn't seen in years, but there was something in his eyes that made my skin crawl. The way they lingered too long when he thought no one was watching. The way his jaw clenched when things didn't go exactly his way. The way he'd grip his beer bottle just a little too tight during football games. "Emily, honey, could you pass the potatoes?" Mom's voice would float across the dinner table, oblivious to the tension I felt building in my chest whenever Gary was around. "Sure, Mom." I'd smile, play the dutiful daughter, ignore the way Gary's gaze followed my every movement. He had a past, I knew that much. Mom mentioned something about a minor incident years ago, some bar fight that landed him in county jail for a few months. "People change," she'd said, waving away my concerns. "Gary's a different man now. He's promised to take care of us." The first few months were bearable. Gary worked long hours at the auto shop downtown, coming home around 7 p.m., most nights, covered in grease and exhaustion. He'd shower, join us for late dinner, make small talk about customers and carburetors. Sometimes he'd even crack a joke that made Mom giggle like a teenager. But slowly, things shifted. The jokes became less frequent, replaced by complaints about work, about money, about the neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking. He started drinking more first, just a beer or two with dinner, then a six-pack in front of the TV, then whiskey straight from the bottle in the garage. The garage, his domain, he called it, a place where a man could be a man. He spent hours out there, tinkering with old car parts, listening to classic rock at volumes that shook the walls. Mom never went in there. I avoided it like the plague. "You girls don't understand the pressure I'm under," he'd mutter, stumbling through the kitchen at 11 p.m., reeking of motor oil and bourbon, "working my ass off to keep this roof over our heads." Mom would soothe him, rub his shoulders, make excuses. "He's just stressed. Emily, the shop's been slow. You know how men are, they need their space." But I saw the changes in her too. The way she started wearing long sleeves in summer. The way she flinched when he raised his voice. The way she stopped inviting her friends over for coffee. The house felt smaller with Gary in it. The walls seemed to close in whenever his truck rumbled into the driveway. I started staying late at work, finding excuses to avoid family dinners. But Mom noticed, and Gary definitely noticed. "Think you're too good for us now." He'd sneer when I'd come home at 9 p.m. College girl with her fancy job, looking down on the working man. "That's not—" I'd start to protest, but Mom would shoot me a pleading look, and I'd swallow my words. The perfect lie we all maintained was suffocating. To the outside world, we were the ideal blended family. Gary played the devoted husband at Mom's work parties, arm around her waist, calling her his angel. Mom beamed and blushed, playing the grateful wife who'd found love again, and I was expected to be the supportive daughter, grateful for the father figure who'd stepped up to complete our broken family. But late at night, When Gary was passed out in his recliner and Mom was crying quietly in their bedroom, the truth scratched at the walls of our suburban prison. We were 3 actors in a play none of us had auditioned for, and the script was getting darker with each passing day. The night it happened, Mom was at her sister's house in Boulder. Aunt Sarah had called around 4 p.m. about some emergency with her divorce papers, and Mom had rushed out, promising to be back by midnight. Gary had been drinking since noon. I could tell by the way he swayed slightly when he walked, the careful way he formed his words to hide the slur. "Where's my wallet?" His voice boomed from the living room around 8:30 p.m. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, trying to stay invisible. "I don't know. Gary, maybe check your truck." "I already checked the fucking truck." His footsteps grew closer, heavy boots on hardwood. "You take money from it." My hands stilled in the soapy water. "What no? Why would I?" "Don't lie to me, girl." He appeared in the doorway, filling it completely. The smell of whiskey and cigarettes rolled off him in waves. $50? Gone. You're the only one here. "I didn't take your money." I turned to face him, keeping my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. "Maybe you spent it at the bar last night and forgot." His face darkened, reddening from his neck up. "You calling me a drunk?" "No, I'm just saying, get in the garage." The words hung in the air between us. My heart hammered against my ribs. "What?" "You heard me. Garage. Now." He grabbed my wrist, his mechanic's grip impossibly strong, and dragged me through the hallway. The garage was dimly lit by a single yellow bulb hanging from a chain. Rain drummed steadily on the metal roof, creating a rhythm that seemed to match my racing pulse. The smell of gasoline and old motor oil was overwhelming. Tools hung on pegboards like medieval weapons. His workbench was cluttered with beer cans and cigarette butts. "You think you're smart, don't you?" Gary released my wrist and positioned himself between me and the door. "College girl, good job, looking down on me in my own house." "Gary, please." "I didn't take." The first blow came without warning. His fist connected with my cheekbone, snapping my head sideways. I'd never been hit before, not really hit. The shock was almost worse than the pain. I stumbled backward, tasting copper in my mouth. "Shut up." His voice was calm now, which was somehow more terrifying. "You took that money to make me look bad in front of your mother. Make her think I'm losing it." "No." I tried to speak, but he backhanded me across the face. I fell to my knees on the cold concrete, my vision blurring with tears. He crouched down beside me, grabbed a handful of my hair, and yanked my head back. His breath was hot against my ear. "No one will believe you, princess. You know that. Right. Your mom worships me. The cops. They know me. I fix their cars. Who are they gonna believe, a respectable working man or a hysterical girl?" He was right, and we both knew it. My tears mixed with blood from my split lip, dripping onto the oil-stained floor. "You're going to tell your mother you fell?" He released my hair and stood up. "You were helping me in the garage, being clumsy like always, and you tripped. Understand?" I nodded, still on my knees, shaking. "Say it." I fell." "Good girl." He walked to his workbench, grabbed a fresh beer. "Clean yourself up. Your mother will be home soon." I stumbled to my feet, my legs barely supporting me. As I reached the door, he called out, casual as anything. "Oh, and Emily. This stays between us. Try to make trouble, and next time will be worse. I've got nothing to lose. You've got everything." I made it to the bathroom and locked the door before collapsing. In the mirror, a stranger stared back, left eye already swelling, lip split and bloody, cheek turning purple. I cleaned the wounds with shaking hands, applied concealer with the expertise of someone trying to hide the truth. When Mom came home at 11:45 p.m., I was in bed, lights off, pretending to sleep. I heard Gary's version through the thin walls, how I'd been moody lately, how I'd stormed off to my room after dinner. Mom's concerned murmurs followed, then silence. The next morning, she gasped when she saw my face. "Emily, what happened?" "I fell," I said, the lie burning my throat. "In the garage, I was helping Gary and tripped over some tools." She fussed over me, ice packs and arnica gel, while Gary sat at the kitchen table, reading his newspaper, occasionally glancing up with a small, satisfied smile. That was the night I learned what fear really meant, not the jump scare kind from horror movies or the nervous flutter before a presentation. Real fear, the kind that lives in your bones, that makes you check locks twice, that turns your own home into a minefield. But it was also the night something else was born inside me, something harder than fear, sharper than pain, something that would wait and plan and eventually strike back. The months that followed became my personal prison. Gary's control tightened like a noose around my life, slowly cutting off every connection to the outside world. First, he convinced Mom that my phone was distracting me from family time. It disappeared one day while I was in the shower, and when I asked about it, Mom handed me an old flip phone instead. "Gary thinks it's better this way," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Just for emergencies. My laptop developed mysterious viruses that Gary graciously offered to fix, but somehow it never worked quite right again. Social media accounts were deleted for security reasons. When friends from work asked why I never responded to texts anymore, I had to make excuses that grew more pathetic each time. Emily's become such a homebody. Gary would tell anyone who asked, his arm heavy around my shoulders at the grocery store. "We just love our family time, don't we, Princess?" I learned to nod and smile, to play the devoted daughter who preferred quiet nights at home. But every Friday and Saturday, when Mom worked late at the hospital, Gary would find reasons to call me into the garage. "Need your help with something?" he'd say, and my stomach would drop. The garage had become my torture chamber. Sometimes he'd just make me stand there for hours, holding tools while he worked, criticizing everything I did. Other times, when the whiskey hit him just right, he'd get physical. Never the face anymore, he'd learned that was too visible. Instead, it was ribs, arms, places that clothing would cover. "You're getting clumsy," Mom commented once when she saw a bruise on my forearm. "Maybe you should be more careful." Gary had her completely convinced that I was going through something. He'd plant seeds of doubt about my mental state, mentioning how I'd been talking to myself or acting paranoid. When I tried to tell her the truth once, she actually scheduled me a therapy appointment. "Depression runs in families," she said gently. "There's no shame in getting help." The therapist, Dr. Martinez, seemed kind enough. But what could I say that my stepfather was abusing me without proof, with my own mother as a witness against me? The neighbors knew something was wrong. I could see it in the way Mrs. Patterson next door would watch from her window when Gary's voice got loud. One evening around 9:30 p.m., she even knocked on the door after hearing a crash from the garage. Gary had thrown a wrench at the wall, just missing my head. "Everything all right, Mrs.?" Patterson asked, trying to peer past Gary's bulk in the doorway. "Just dropped some tools," Gary said smoothly, that fake charm oozing out. "You know how it is, Patricia. These old hands aren't what they used to be." She looked past him and caught my eye. I wanted to scream, to run to her, to beg for help. Instead, I smiled and waved. "Just helping Gary organize. Sorry about the noise." After she left, Gary grabbed my arm hard enough to leave fingerprints. "You did good," he said. "Keep it up, and we won't have problems." That's when I started documenting everything. I found an old digital watch in a thrift store, the kind nobody would look twice at. But hidden inside was a tiny camera I'd ordered online and had delivered to my office. Every time I was forced into that garage, I made sure to position myself where the camera could record. The footage was grainy, the audio sometimes muffled, but it was evidence. I saved everything to a cloud account Gary didn't know about, accessed only from computers at the public library during my lunch breaks. 6 months into this hell, I had over 20 videos. Gary hitting me with a belt, Gary burning my arm with a cigarette. Gary describing in detail what he'd do if I ever tried to leave. The worst one was from a Tuesday night at 11:15 p.m. When he held a screwdriver to my throat and made me repeat after him, "I'm nothing. I'm worthless. I deserve this." But even with all this evidence, I was paralyzed. Who would I show it to? The police who got free tune-ups from Gary's shop, my mother who had already chosen her side. I was trapped in a sick game where everyone else seemed to be playing by different rules. The isolation was perhaps worse than the physical abuse. I had no friends left. Gary had seen to that. No family who would believe me. Even my co-workers had started to distance themselves from the weird girl who never joined happy hour and always had mysterious injuries. I existed in a bubble of fear and silence, going through the motions of life while dying inside. Wake up, go to work, come home to hell, repeat. The garage loomed in my nightmares, that yellow bulb swinging like a pendulum, counting down to something I couldn't name. But in that darkness, in that complete isolation, something was growing. Not hope that had died months ago. Something else. Something that whispered to me late at night as I reviewed my hidden videos. Evidence, patience, justice. Gary thought he had broken me. Mom thought I was having a breakdown. Everyone else thought I was just another troubled young woman who couldn't handle stress. They were all wrong. I wasn't broken. I was building. Every bruise, every threat, every humiliation was another brick in the wall of what would become Gary's destruction. He just didn't know it yet. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in November. I had finally worked up the courage to show Mom the evidence. Gary was at his weekly poker game. He wouldn't be home until after midnight. I had transferred the clearest video to a memory card, my hands shaking as I approached her in the living room. "Mom, I need to show you something." My voice was barely above a whisper. She looked up from her medical journals, reading glasses perched on her nose. What is it?" "Honey, you look pale." I sat beside her, the memory card feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my palm. "It's about Gary, what he's been doing when you're not here." Her expression immediately shifted, walls going up. "Emily, we've discussed this. Your paranoia about Gary needs to stop. It's not paranoia." I pulled out my phone, inserted the card. "Just watch, please. Just watch this one video." The footage began to play Gary's voice clear as he threatened me, his hand raising, the sound of impact. But before it could finish, Mom snatched the phone from my hands and removed the memory card. "Where did you get this?" Her voice was ice. "I recorded it. Mom, he's been—" She stood up abruptly, walked to the kitchen, and I watched in horror as she held the memory card over the sink. "This is sick, Emily. Creating fake videos. How did someone from that tech company help you?" "It's not fake, Mom. Please!" The garbage disposal roared to life. She dropped the card in, and with it went months of evidence, ground into nothing. "You're destroying our family," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Gary has been nothing but patient with you, and this is how you repay him, creating elaborate lies." "Mom, look at me." I pulled up my sleeve, showing the bruises. "These aren't lies. You've always been clumsy. And lately, with your mental health issues." She wouldn't even look at the marks. "I think you need professional help. Real help. Maybe an inpatient program." The front door opened. Gary was home early. "What's all the yelling about?" He appeared in the kitchen doorway, taking in the scene, Mom crying, me with my sleeves pulled up, the sink still running. "She made a video," Mom told him, her voice broken. "Some kind of deep fake or something, of you, hurting her." Gary's eyes found mine, and I saw triumph there. Complete, absolute triumph. "Emily, that's very serious. Creating false evidence is a crime. You know." "It wasn't false. I think we need to consider our options," he said to Mom, pulling her into his arms. "Maybe she needs more help than we can give her." That night, After Mom had cried herself to sleep and Gary had made sure to whisper more threats through my locked bedroom door, I made my decision. They wanted me gone. Fine. But I wouldn't go to some psychiatric facility where Gary could spin whatever narrative he wanted. I would leave on my own terms. At 3:45 a.m., I packed a bag with only essentials. I had been saving cash in small amounts, hidden in a tampon box, the one place Gary would never look. $800. Not much, but enough to start. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of the garage one last time. The yellow bulb was off, but streetlight filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the concrete where my blood had been spilled so many times. "No one will believe you," I whispered to the darkness, echoing Gary's favorite phrase. But they will. Soon. I slipped out the back door and walked 2 miles to the bus station. As the Greyhound pulled away at 5:30 a.m., Denver disappearing behind me, I wasn't running away. I was regrouping. Gary thought he'd won, thought he'd driven me off for good. Mom thought I was having a mental breakdown. They had no idea what was coming. I rented a small room in Aurora, just far enough away but still within striking distance. Got a burner phone. Kept working remotely, my company didn't care where I logged in from, and I began to plan. The beauty of trauma is that it teaches you patience. Gary had taught me how to endure pain, how to hide, how to wait for the perfect moment. He'd created his own destroyer, shaped me blow by blow into someone who could play the long game. I started sending anonymous tips to the domestic violence hotline, building a paper trail, reached out to Mrs. Patterson through a fake social media account, learning that she'd been documenting the sounds from our house for months. Worried, but unsure what to do. Found out that Gary's poker game wasn't poker at all. It was an illegal gambling ring that the local police were already investigating. But the masterpiece of my plan involved something Gary would never expect forgiveness, or at least the appearance of it. 3 weeks after I left, I called Mom from my burner phone. My voice was small, broken, exactly what they'd expect from someone who'd had time to think about what they'd done. "Mom, it's me. I want to come home. I want to get help. You were right. I need help." I could hear Gary in the background, coaching her response. "We want what's best for you. Emily," she said carefully. "Are you ready to admit what you did? To apologize to Gary?" I swallowed my rage. Let it fuel my performance. "Yes, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I want to come home. Please, come for dinner Sunday," she said after a pause. "We'll talk." Sunday. 4 days away. 4 days to prepare for the final act. The 4 days before Sunday dinner were the most calculated of my life. Every move was choreographed, every word rehearsed. I called Mom twice more, each time sounding more contrite, more aware of my supposed problems. "I've been seeing things clearly now," I told her on Saturday afternoon. "Being away, having time to think. I realize how ungrateful I've been. Gary's been trying to be a father to me, and I've been fighting him every step." "Oh, honey," Mom's voice cracked with relief. "I'm so glad you're finally understanding. Gary's been so hurt by all this." In the background, I could hear him coaching her, his low rumbles of approval. Perfect. Let him think he'd won completely. Meanwhile, I was building my trap. The videos on the cloud account were safe. The memory card Mom destroyed had been a decoy with only one copied file. The real evidence remained untouched. I created anonymous email accounts and drafted messages to be sent on a timer, one to the Denver Police Department's Internal Affairs Division, one to the local news station that loved exposé stories, one to a domestic violence advocacy group known for their aggressive pursuit of justice. But the masterstroke involved Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Patterson's brother-in-law, and a retired police sergeant who lived 3 blocks away. I'd learned about him through careful research, finding his reputation for being one of the few clean cops who'd never taken Gary's bribes. He'd also lost his daughter to domestic violence 5 years ago. I didn't contact him directly, too risky. Instead, I made sure Mrs. Patterson accidentally Received an anonymous letter detailing my situation, complete with dates and times that matched the disturbances she'd documented. The letter ended with, Sunday night at 11:30 p.m., the garage, please help. Mrs. Patterson, bless her heart, did exactly what I'd hoped. She went straight to Mr. Rodriguez. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling, fitting weather for what was to come. I knocked on the door at 6 p.m., sharp, wearing long sleeves and my most submissive expression. Mom answered, pulling me into a hug that felt like embracing a stranger. You look thin, she said, studying my face. Have you been eating? Not much, I admitted truthfully. Planning revenge had killed my appetite. Gary stood in the hallway, arms crossed, playing the wounded stepfather. Emily, he said with a calculated coldness. I hope you're here to make things right. I am. I met his eyes briefly, then looked down. I'm so sorry. Gary, I don't know what got into me. The stress from work. I guess I just projected things onto you that weren't real. His satisfaction was palpable. Well, we all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. Dinner was excruciating. Every bite of Mom's pot roast felt like swallowing sand. Gary held court, magnanimously forgiving me while subtly reminding me of my place. Mom beamed, thrilled her family was healing. I think you should move back home, Mom said as she cleared the plates. We can get through this together. I'd like that. I lied. Maybe. Maybe I could start by helping Gary in the garage. Like old times, show him I want to make amends. Gary's eyes sharpened with interest. The garage, his domain, where he felt most powerful. That's a wonderful idea, Mom said quickly. You two need to rebuild trust. The rest of the evening crawled by. We watched TV, pretended to be a normal family. At 10:45 p.m., Mom yawned and announced she was heading to bed, her usual Sunday routine since she had early rounds on Monday. I'll be up soon, Angel, Gary said, kissing her forehead. Just want to finish this beer. By 11:15 p.m., she was asleep. I knew because Gary had checked, coming back with that familiar predatory look. Garage? He said simply. Now. I followed him, my phone hidden in my pocket, already recording. But this time, I'd also activated a live stream to the cloud. No way he could destroy this evidence. The garage smelled the same oil and metal and stale beer. The yellow bulb cast its sickly light. Gary closed the door behind us, locked it. You think I'm stupid, he said, his fake kindness evaporating. You think I believe this sudden change of heart. I don't. He backhanded me, just like the first time. I fell to my knees, tasting blood. You came back because you had nowhere else to go, he continued, pacing around me. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to check yourself into that psychiatric facility tomorrow. You're going to admit you're delusional, and you're going to stay there until I decide you've learned your lesson. He grabbed my hair, yanked my head back. Or I'll make what I've done so far look like love taps. Understand? Yes, I gasped. Yes, what? Yes, sir. Good girl. He released me, walked to his workbench. Now, we're going to practice what you'll say to the doctors tomorrow, about how you've been having violent fantasies, how you hurt yourself for attention. I stayed on my knees, watching the clock on the wall. 11:28 p.m. 2 more minutes. Stand up, Gary ordered. Look at me when I'm talking to you. I stood slowly, positioning myself so the phone in my pocket faced him directly. 11:29 p.m. You're going to tell them. Gary began. The sound of the garage door motor engaging cut him off. His head snapped toward it, confusion and rage battling on his face. What the fuck? The door rose slowly, revealing Mr. Rodriguez in full uniform despite his retirement, Mrs. Patterson beside him, and 2 active duty officers behind them. Their body cams were recording. Their hands were on their weapons. Gary's face went white. He looked at me, then at them. his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I smiled then. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who'd waited months for this moment. Actually, Gary, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I'll tell them the truth. Step away from her. Now. Mr. Rodriguez's voice was steel, his hand steady on his service weapon. Gary stood frozen, his brain trying to process how his controlled world had suddenly shattered. The garage that had been his kingdom, his torture chamber, was now flooded with witnesses. The yellow bulb swayed slightly, casting moving shadows across his panicked face. "This is private property," he finally managed, trying to summon his usual bravado. "You can't just, 'We received a report of domestic violence in progress.'" One of the active officers interrupted. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" Blood was still trickling from my split lip. My cheek was already swelling from his backhand. "Yes," I said clearly. "He hit me, just now, and many times before." "That's bullshit," Gary exploded, taking a step toward me. "She's mentally ill. Ask her mother. This girl makes things up." "Stop." Mr. Rodriguez moved between us. "Sir, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. For what you can't arrest me in my own fucking garage, she's lying." "I have it all on video," I said, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. "Tonight, the past 8 months, everything." Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, her own phone in hand. "I've been recording the sounds from this garage for months. Screams, crashes, threats. I have 43 separate recordings." Gary's face went from red to white to gray. "You fucking bitch," he snarled at me. "You set me up." "No," I said, meeting his eyes for the last time. "You set yourself up. Every time you hit me. Every time you told me no one would believe me. Every time you thought you were untouchable. Turn around, hands behind your back. Now." The younger officer had his handcuffs out. Gary looked wildly around the garage, like a trapped animal seeking escape. His eyes landed on a wrench on the workbench, and I saw the calculation. Could he reach it? Could he fight his way out? Don't even think about it. "Mr. Rodriguez said quietly, "My daughter died because of a man like you. I promise you. Give me a reason." The grief and rage in his voice was enough to cut through Gary's panic. Slowly, mechanically, he turned around and put his hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs echoed in the silence. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer began, but Gary wasn't listening. He was staring at me over his shoulder, his eyes promising retribution. "Your mother won't believe this," he said. "She'll know you manipulated." The back door flew open. Mom stood there in her robe, hair wild, face pale with shock. "What's happening?" I heard the garage door and Gary. She took in the scene, Gary in handcuffs, my bloodied face, the police, the neighbors. Her hand went to her mouth. "Mom," I started, but she was already shaking her head. No, this is a mistake. Officers, my daughter has mental health issues. She's been making false accusations." "Ma'am," Mr. Rodriguez interrupted gently. "We have video evidence, audio recordings. Your daughter's injuries are consistent with assault, and we just witnessed him strike her." "That's impossible." Mom's voice was hollow. "Gary wouldn't." "Emily, what did you do? Even now, even with him in handcuffs, she blamed me." The final knife twisted in my heart, but I was beyond caring. "I survived," I told her. "That's what I did." The officers led Gary out, having to duck his head to fit through the doorway. Neighbors had gathered on the street, phones out, recording everything. Gary Holbrook, the respectable mechanic who fixed everyone's cars, was being arrested for domestic violence. By morning, it would be all over the neighborhood Facebook group. "We'll need you to come to the station," the younger officer told me. "File a formal statement. Hand over the evidence." "I have everything uploaded to cloud storage," I said. 8 months of documentation. I can access it from anywhere." Mom sank down onto the garage steps. looking lost. 8 months. You've been planning this for 8 months. No, Mom, I've been surviving for 8 months. I've been planning this for 3 weeks. Mrs. Patterson approached cautiously. I'm so sorry, dear. I suspected, but I didn't know how to help without making it worse. You helped tonight, I said. That's what matters. As we walked toward the police cars, I turned back to look at the garage one last time. The yellow bulb still swung gently, illuminating the oil stains, the tool-covered walls, the workbench where Gary had plotted my destruction. But he'd failed. The door was wide open now, no longer a prison but just an ordinary garage. The rain had stopped, and cool November air swept through, carrying away the smell of fear and violence. Emily, Mom called from the doorway. This is a mistake. We can fix this. Just tell them you were confused. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. She'd made her choice months ago when she destroyed that memory card, when she chose to believe Gary's lies over her daughter's bruises. As the police car pulled away, Gary in the back of one, me following in another to give my statement. I caught his eyes through the window. He mouthed something, probably another threat, another promise that this wasn't over. But I just smiled and mouthed back the words he'd said to me so many times. No one will believe you. The difference was, this time it was true. After tonight, after the videos went public, after the news stations got the story, no one would believe him. The mechanic who'd built his reputation on being a stand-up guy, who'd charmed my mother and intimidated me into silence, was finished. And me, I was just beginning. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Television had prepared me for grand chambers with soaring ceilings, but this was just a functional room with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable wooden benches. 6 months had passed since that night in the garage. 6 months of depositions, evidence reviews, and pretrial hearings. Now, finally, the main event. Gary sat at the defendant's table in an ill-fitting suit, trying to look respectable. His attorney had coached him well clean-shaven, hair neatly combed, hands folded, but I could still see the predator underneath the sheep's clothing. Mom sat 3 rows behind him, not beside me. She hadn't spoken to me since the arrest, except through her lawyer regarding the divorce proceedings. She'd chosen her side even after seeing the evidence, clinging to the delusion that I'd somehow orchestrated everything, that Gary was the victim of an elaborate frame-up. The prosecutor, Ms. Daniels, was a small woman with a voice that could fill a stadium. Your Honor, we'd like to present video evidence, marked as Exhibit 12. The screen flickered to life. There I was, kneeling on the garage floor, Gary's hand in my hair, his voice crystal clear. You're nothing. You're worthless. You deserve this. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Gary's recorded violence. Each strike, each threat, each moment of terror I'd endured played out for everyone to see. The gallery behind me shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, Jesus Christ! Gary's attorney tried to object, claimed the videos were edited, taken out of context, that I'd provoked him. But there were too many, too detailed, too consistent. 43 videos in total. Hours of abuse documented with timestamps that matched Mrs. Patterson's audio recordings, matched the medical records from the ER visits I'd hidden from Mom, matched the anonymous reports to the domestic violence hotline. When they played the final video the night of the arrest, I watched Mom's face. She was crying silently, but I couldn't tell if it was for me or for Gary, maybe for herself, for the fantasy she'd built and lost. Ms. Monroe, Ms. Daniels addressed me when I took the stand. Can you describe the pattern of abuse? I spoke clearly, emotionlessly, letting the facts speak louder than tears ever could. The escalation from verbal to physical, the isolation tactics, the way he'd turned my own mother against me, how he'd made the garage his special place for punishment, knowing the neighbors couldn't see inside. He told me no one would believe me, I said, looking directly at Gary. He said it every time, like it was part of the ritual. Gary's attorney, Mr. Walsh, tried to paint me as unstable during cross-examination. Isn't it true you were seeing a therapist for mental health issues? Yes. My mother made the appointment after I tried to tell her about the abuse. She thought I was delusional. And didn't you create these videos to support false allegations? No. I created them to survive. To prove I wasn't crazy when everyone around me was being convinced that I was. You left home and then orchestrated an elaborate trap. I left home because my mother destroyed evidence and threatened to have me institutionalized for telling the truth. I came back because I knew he would hurt someone else if I didn't stop him. The revelation about the destroyed memory card caused a stir. Mom's face went white. She hadn't known I'd kept copies, hadn't known her complicity would be exposed. Then came the character witnesses. 3 other women Gary had dated before Mom, each with similar stories they'd been too afraid to tell before. Mrs. Patterson with her detailed logs of sounds and dates. Mr. Rodriguez, explaining how the scene that night was textbook domestic violence, how Gary's behavior matched patterns he'd seen in 30 years of police work. Gary's defense fell apart piece by piece. His claim that I was mentally unstable was contradicted by my work records, testimony from colleagues. His assertion that the videos were fake crumbled under technical analysis. His story about being a good stepfather trying to discipline a troubled young woman was demolished by the sheer volume and viciousness of the recorded abuse. When they played the audio of him threatening to kill me if I ever told anyone a recording from 2 weeks before my breakdown, even his attorney looked defeated. Gary took the stand on day 3, still trying to salvage something. He painted himself as a hard-working man overwhelmed by a manipulative stepdaughter. But under cross-examination, his temper showed. When Ms. Daniels asked about specific incidents, his face reddened. She was asking for it. He snapped at one point, then tried to backtrack. But everyone had heard it. Everyone saw the real Gary emerge. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Aggravated assault, domestic violence, making terroristic threats, false imprisonment for the times he'd locked me in the garage. As the verdict was read, Gary stared at me with pure hatred, but there was something else there too, disbelief. He truly hadn't thought this would happen. He'd believed his own lie that no one would believe me. Mom fled the courtroom before the sentencing. I never saw if she looked back. The judge gave Gary 5 years, with possibility of parole in 3. It wasn't enough, would never be enough, but it was something. More importantly, it was public. His name would forever be linked to these crimes. The mechanic shop had already fired him. His reputation was destroyed. As the bailiffs led him away, Gary turned one last time. "This isn't over," he mouthed. I stood up, gathered my things, and walked out of the courtroom into the afternoon sunlight. Ms. Daniels caught up with me on the courthouse steps. "You did incredible," she said. "Your testimony, your evidence, it made the difference." "It shouldn't have been that hard," I replied. "I shouldn't have had to document months of abuse just to be believed." She nodded sadly. "No, you shouldn't have. But you did what you had to do. And because of you, he can't hurt anyone else." I thought about Mom, probably driving home to an empty house, to a garage that would forever echo with the truth she'd refused to see. I thought about the other women who'd testified, finally free to speak their truth. I thought about the next woman Gary might have targeted, who was safe now because I'd refused to stay silent. "Yeah," I said. "Now everyone believes me." I returned to the house one last time. 3 weeks after the trial ended, Mom had moved out, couldn't bear to live there anymore, according to the neighbor who'd called me. The for sale sign swayed in the spring breeze, looking out of place against the familiar backdrop of my childhood home. I still had my key. The door opened to an empty house, our furniture gone, only indentations in the carpet showing where life had once existed. My footsteps echoed as I walked through the hollow rooms, each one holding memories both beautiful and terrible. The kitchen where Mom had taught me to bake, the living room where we'd watched movies before Gary, the hallway where I'd learned to walk quietly, to become invisible. But I hadn't come for nostalgia. I'd come for the garage. The side door was unlocked. I pushed it open, and afternoon sunlight flooded in, so different from the sick yellow glow of that single bulb. The space was empty now, Gary's tools sold or seized as evidence, his workbench removed. Even the oil stains on the concrete had been power washed away. It was just a garage, just a room. I stood in the center, where I'd knelt so many times, where I'd bled and begged and finally fought back. The shadows that had terrified me for months were gone, chased away by the open door and natural light. "You were wrong," I said to the empty space, to Gary's ghost that would probably always linger here. Everyone believed me. My phone buzzed a text from my new therapist confirming our appointment for tomorrow. Real therapy this time, with someone who specialized in trauma recovery. I was living in my own apartment now, had gotten a promotion at work, was slowly rebuilding friendships that Gary had destroyed. Some days were harder than others. Some nights I still woke up thinking I heard that garage door opening, but I was healing. I walked to the garage door opener and hit the button. The motor engaged, the same sound that had once meant terror, then salvation. The door rose slowly, revealing the suburban street where I'd grown up. Mrs. Patterson was in her garden, and she waved when she saw me. I waved back. The door reached the top and stopped. I hit the button again, watching it descend, up and down, a mechanical rhythm that had no power over me anymore. When it was fully open again, I disabled the automatic closer. The door would stay open. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the empty garage with sunlight streaming in, the door wide open to the world. Posted it online with just one caption, "No more secrets." The responses were immediate. Other survivors sharing their stories, offering support, thanking me for speaking out. There were negative comments too. People who still didn't believe, who thought I was too harsh on Gary, who said I should have forgiven my mother, but their voices were drowned out by the chorus of those who understood, who'd lived their own versions of this nightmare. A car pulled up outside. Not Mom, I would have recognized her Honda. This was a young couple, here to view the house. They looked happy, excited, probably seeing their future in these empty rooms. The woman's hand rested on her pregnant belly as they walked up the driveway. "Oh, sorry," the man said, seeing me in the garage. "The realtor said the house was empty." "It is," I said. "I was just saying goodbye." They looked uncertain, but the woman smiled kindly. "Did you live here?" "Once." I stepped out of the garage, into the sunlight. "It's a good house, just needed some bad things cleared out." I walked past them, down the driveway I'd once run down in fear, now walking with purpose. At the sidewalk, I turned back one last time. The couple was exploring the garage, the woman laughing at something the man said. They had no idea what had happened in there, and that was okay. Maybe they'd fill it with bicycles and holiday decorations, normal things that belonged in normal garages. My phone rang. It was the district attorney's office. They wanted to discuss another case. Another woman who'd come forward after seeing my story on the news. She needed help building evidence against her abuser. They wanted to know if I'd speak with her, share what I'd learned. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Give her my number." As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The house grew smaller, the garage disappearing from view, but I knew it would always be there in my memory, not as a place of victimhood, but as the place where I'd finally stood up and declared that I deserved to be believed. Gary was right about one thing, though he'd never understand the irony. No one had believed me, until they did, until I made them, until I refused to let his voice be the only one heard. The garage door stayed open behind me, no longer a prison, no longer a secret, just a door that I'd finally walked through, into the light, into freedom, into a life where my voice was the loudest one in my head. He said no one would believe me. He was wrong. Everyone did. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but these stories need to be told. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if these stories resonate with you, and please share your thoughts. Your voice matters, your story matters, and you deserve to be believed. Stay strong, and remember, the garage door doesn't have to stay closed.